Oh, and great. And I want to let everybody know too that this webinar is being recorded. I think I said that. So today it's very exciting. We're actually doing this webinar as number 4 of a 4-part series, and it's been very well attended. So we're just really grateful that everybody's here. And before I get started, I just want to let you all know that we're gathered here today. We're in Kelowna on the traditional and unceded territory of the Okanagan Syilx people, and we recognize, honor, and respect the presence of Indigenous people, past, present, and future. And just a little note about what's been going on here in Kelowna and in the Shuswap and in many parts of BC. WeBC serves BC women in business, and we just want to let you know that we're thinking about you. And I got an email from a woman yesterday who the fires had really impacted her business. So if any of you out there in the webinar today don't already subscribe to our e-blasts, please subscribe to our e-blast. Jen's going to put a note in the chat. And what'll happen is if we at WeBC get any notice that there are going to be supports from the government or the tourism industry or anything like that, we are going to send out an e-blast to all of our business people, all of the women that are in business in BC. So please stay connected, because it's been a really, it's been a real time. Okay, so I'd also like to invite anybody that's in the webinar today to write where they're from and maybe their first name in the chat, and on what traditional territory that you are located in. If you don't know, Jen is going to post a territorial map, and that would be great for you to kind of know your traditional territory and your regular territory. Last but not least, for this part, I just want to let you know that at the end of today's session, we're going to do a feedback poll. And in the feedback poll, there's a little area where you can actually write down a suggestion. So if you've really enjoyed this webinar series and you want to hear more for the government, you just want to see Stephanie's beautiful face again, go ahead and let us know that that's what you want to see. And we will certainly consider it when we're doing our planning for the next session, the next section, sort of, November to January 2023, 24. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody again. I've welcomed you several times today, which is great. My name is Kathy Burrell, and I'm your facilitator for today's webinar. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at WeBC, which just means that I've formerly had a business and I currently do have a business. My background is in retail, fashion design, and manufacturing. So all of you today looking to sell to the government, I know exactly what you're doing, and I think that's great. Okay. I just want to say a little bit about what we offer at WeBC, because a lot of people know about our webinars, seminars, but they don't know the other services that we provide. So we provide support for your small business journey. We offer financing to get your business started and operating capital to fuel your growth. We offer more flexibility than traditional lenders because we take a holistic approach and provide loans based on your business's viability, not based on a formula like maybe a big bank would do for you. This means we provide loans to a diverse range of women-owned businesses and support you with integrated services, including complementary training, complementary mentoring, and complementary business advising. So believe it or not, if any of you were to apply for a loan through WeBC and be approved for the whole term of your loan, if that's 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, you would get complementary training, mentoring, and business advising with us. And we think that's fantastic. And you should consider us if you're looking for financing for your business. From essential business skills development to personalized business advice, we know the right questions to ask and the right resources to connect you with. In our mentoring programs, you can connect with a network of women entrepreneurs and experts around BC who can support and inspire you. You can learn more about our services at our website, which again, Jen will post in the chat, we-bc.ca. And yeah, we hope that again, you'll sign up for our e-blast newsletter, because we are one of the best places to find information on women in business. Okay, so today we join WeBC, which is us, and Procurement Assistant Canada, which is we refer to as PAC, for an interactive panel discussion to learn about supplying goods and services to the government. I'm delighted to welcome Stephanie Waters, Project Officer, Procurement Assistance Canada. I'm also delighted to welcome Fintan Quilty and Elise Montford, and they are both client engagement advisors for the PSPC Pacific region. So thank you all for being with us today. We hope anyone in the webinar, if you want to ask questions, go ahead, type things in the chat. We're going to try and leave time for questions. And the other thing that we're going to do is make sure that you have the contact information that you need to contact Stephanie or Fintan or Elsie. So anyway, I'll flip it over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen, and welcome and thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And yes, welcome everybody. I hope that everybody that is typically based in Shuswap, Kelowna is safe. And if you are not, that the smoke isn't too bad wherever you are. As Kathy said, we are joined today by the business advisory team, Fintan and Elsie, which is very exciting. It's been a really valuable experience to be able to bring these different parts of the procurement umbrella from PSPC to you. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess, our last session, which is posted on the WeBC website, was with the contracting authority, and now we have business advisory. So to get started, like I said, my name is Stephanie Waters. I am from Procurement Assistance Canada. I've been here for going on 3 years now. If you've been at the last couple of sessions, you don't need to hear any more about me. My information will be provided after this and in the follow-up email. Let me know if you have any questions, anything too specific. Like you said, we have a full hour here, so we're not going to be able to get too in-depth into any one particular specific topic. So if you have a business question about you specifically, reach out to me after. We will schedule a meeting. If there's anything that should get passed along to Fintan and Elsie, I will do that as well. So if you don't see their contact information, don't panic. Just reach out to me with your question to them and I will pass it along. I think Kathy covered it all. Questions in the chat. We're going to get started here, and as questions arise, just fire them in. But first, I will pass it over to Fintan and Elsie for a quick introduction. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, everybody. We're both in Victoria, so we're on the traditional lands of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. In our role as client engagement advisors, we engage directly with the federal government departments and agencies, and we provide advice and guidance on procurement prior to the actual procurement processes. So in speaking to standing offers and supply arrangements, which is the topic for today, we'll be able to give you an idea of what guidance is provided internally within government, and therefore the resulting request for standing offers that you'll see published on our websites. So my name is Fintan, and I'm here for the duration of this morning, and Elsie is with me as well.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you.
All right. Thank you so much. So I guess just to get started, anybody, again, who has been joining us throughout the entire series may be more familiar, but for anybody who hasn't, that is totally fine. We will catch you up in good time. So to start with, can you just tell us a little bit about standing offers, about supply arrangements? How are they different? How are they similar? Their names are definitely different. So is the bidding, tendering process any different? Commodities, all that stuff. Can you just explain what it is?
Yes, absolutely. This morning, Elsie and I will share the microphone as it is. And I'm going to start off. I mean, first thing about standing offers and supply arrangements, that terminology is federal government. So that's what you'll find when you're on Canada Buys. You'll find a request for a standing offer, request for a supply arrangement. If you're looking at the BC government or other governments, other provinces, they may use slightly different terminology. So, but today we're federal government, and we'll focus on our terminologies. So, in bidding and tendering, they're both very similar. A supply arrangement or a standing offer, really what we're doing is we're creating a list of pre-qualified suppliers. So there is really no formal contractual agreement with the standing offer or the supply arrangement. So I'll separate each of them. The standing offer itself, the client will make a call up on the standing offer. The call up will be the actual contract. So you need to pay attention to what the terms are in the call up, but also in tendering, you need to be very careful of what's included in the tender document, the supply arrangement, which is the pre-qualification. Look very closely at the details for your bid submission, the evaluation procedure, mandatory submission requirements that are within the request for the standing offer. One of the biggest differences between standing offers and supply arrangements is the standing offer is going to request a set price. Standing offers, you're going to see that they're more prevalent around goods because it's easier to put a set price in place for a good. And those set prices are going to be requested for the period of the standing offer. And sometimes will last for up to 3 years. I've seen them as extended out as far as 5 years, which is kind of unrealistic in today's economy, but you'll be establishing prices for up to a 3-year period. So be very aware of the prices that you're presenting and your ability to maintain those prices during that period of the standing offer. There's no option to change that pricing once you've been issued the standing offer. Supply arrangement is a little bit different. Although it does pre-qualify the suppliers, it pre-qualifies the suppliers in your capability. The actual request won't be laid out in the supply arrangement. That will come as a result of a request for a proposal within the supply arrangement. And there's various different ways of doing that. Once again, you have to be aware of what's in the request for the supply arrangement, the tender document, to pay attention to those details. The supply arrangement won't necessarily have fixed prices for the period of the supply arrangement. Quite often what you'll see, if there's any pricing at all, it may be a ceiling price. So within the RFP, then the supplier gets the opportunity to adjust their pricing. So you'll see a lot of supply arrangements that are service type requirements. Myself with a marine background, I always like to reach back and say, okay, so if I have a supply arrangement for marine electricians and a particular shipyard is not busy when we're looking for the RFP, then you might adjust your pricing of your electricians a little bit differently because you're trying to get into business, or the other RFPs under supply arrangement not been successful for you. So you're looking at it and say, okay, well, I'm going to bring my pricing down and see if I can be more successful the next go around. So that's the nice thing about the supply arrangement. You're seeing a lot more of them in the federal government because of that ability to adjust the pricing. And the other thing about supply arrangements is we'll often see that there's refresh periods in the supply arrangement. So the refresh period is a good option for us to allow to bring new suppliers on. It also allows us to leave the supply arrangement tendering period open for longer, because really we could leave it open for many, many years, 10, 12, 15 years if we wanted to, because we're going to give the opportunity to bring new suppliers on throughout that period. And so those are the big differences between the standing offers and supply arrangements.
Thank you so much. That is very helpful. So yeah, essentially the standing offer is going to be more of a predictable commodity, often more of a goods. Could be something, if we were going to be consistent with our catering examples, it could be even something like we need this many tables, chairs, and sandwiches at this event every year, quarterly, whatever it might be. You know what it's going to be. You have your price, away you go. And a supply arrangement might be something more like we're going to need lunches at some point at some location, and there's going to be a little more variety. And yeah, so but overall the bidding process is going to be the same. You're gonna read your solicitation document very closely, and you're going to submit that bid. You're going to be added to a pre-qualified list of suppliers, and then when they need that, you may or may not get a call. Hopefully you do. But yeah, so I guess more in line with that, what happens after it's issued? So now they need one of those call-ups. They have their list of qualified suppliers, and now they need to call that in. They need the good, they need the service. What happens next?
Take this one. It's really, as you say, read your solicitation documents. That will give you the guide on how the whole process should work. So I'll give you just a little bit of an overview of what to expect, what you might be seeing in the solicitation documents, what happens when it's the standing offer is issued. So occasionally when we go through a request for standing offer and it's a competitive process, we may only be awarding it or issuing it, to one supplier. In these circumstances, that one supplier is going to be given those call-ups. So those call-ups will come on an as and when required basis. So they might not all come at the beginning. They might be spread out through the period of the standing offer. That's normal. And then that's when you're in contract. If there are multiple suppliers who will be issued a standing offer, then there's a couple different things that can happen. So you might see a right of first refusal. So what this means is that the highest ranked supplier who has been issued the standing offer will be contacted and asked if they can do the call-up. So if they can, then the call-up will be issued to them, and then the work will be done. If they cannot, then the work will be offered to the next highest ranked supplier on the list. And this ranking will be identified in that solicitation document, or how that process will happen. The next option is proportional basis. So in this case, the highest ranked supplier on that list will be given the largest portion of the work. The second ranked supplier will be given the next largest portion of the work. So a breakdown for this, if you have, say, three suppliers that are issued standing offers, will be maybe 50, 30, 20. So the highest ranked supplier will get the majority of that work, and then it'll go through to make sure that everybody gets the percentages that they are identified in that solicitation document, and then the agreement that follows. Finally, there can be situations where we have multiple suppliers on a list, but it's a very low dollar value, or there is no way to rank the suppliers. And in those cases, what you might see is a non-competitive process. And those will follow our non-competitive contracting regulations as per the government contracting regulations, which are always a good read if you have some time. So that gives you a basic outline of the standing offer process. Is there any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Elsie. That was a great answer. And yes, the contracting policies are a great read right before bed. So just to follow up, there is one question from the audience, which we will get to in just 1 second. But when you talk about the right of refusal, does that negatively impact the supplier if they decline at this time, if they, are offered the call up and, their capacity has changed since they first joined the list, and now they don't have time, they don't need the work? Does that lower their ranking? Does that, or they get less likely to get a call in the future?
Pass this over to Vincent.
No, it does not at all adversely affect the supplier. If at some point the supplier is consistently unable to meet the requirement, then we do have the option of setting aside the standing offer or supply arrangement, and therefore moving the ranking up. Traditionally, doesn't really happen. I'm glad you mentioned, Stephanie, the example, the catering example that's been provided to this group. That example actually has almost everything we're covering today built into that standing offer. Because when you look at what I had mentioned first about getting your pricing in there, right? So your pricing tables are in that standing offer. You can see 3 years of pricing has been requested. You can see the pricing has been requested in different areas. Not sure if it's called areas or regions in that particular document, but you can see the pricing is requested in different areas. And also you can see the ranking is also listed in that document in different areas. So you can see in that document, in some areas, the ranking has been listed for 3 suppliers in one particular location. In another location, there's 2 suppliers. In one location, there's only 1 supplier. I think what you're seeing there is some traditional values based on the previous standing offers for that particular commodity. But this document, will mention it more than once this morning, I'm sure. It's actually a really good example of almost everything is packed into one standing offer. So it's a nice document to refer back to. And of course, I know that the group, anybody that's in catering or food, will have definitely had a chance to look at it. But if you haven't, it's a good opportunity to look at that one, even though that's not your particular commodity, because you're actually seeing a great big drafted template right in front of you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So question from the audience is, how can I apply for a standing offer? So it's not so much an application. It's going to go through that. The front half is going to look the same as an RFP bid. The back half is just going to be a little bit different. So like Finn was talking about at the beginning, you'll go on Canada Buys, you'll put in your keyword, that whole search process is going to be the same. And then instead of a one-time tender that's going to result in an award, you're going to do that same. You're going to read your solicitation document. You're going to ask your questions. You're going to put together your bid, demonstrate all your qualifications. You're going to include your financial information, all of that stuff as per the solicitation document. And then you're going to send that in. If it's compliant and you get the go ahead, you'll be added to a list. And then that list will be referenced when they require that commodity. So said it's going to be that same bidding process, but then instead of ending with an award, it's going to end with joining this list for future consideration, so to speak. So
Stephanie, I had a question. Kathy Burrell. I just wondered about payment. I know that a lot of our small businesses, women-owned small businesses, you know, they're not, they might be used to revenue generating that is different than this. You know, they might be doing a craft fair or a farmer's market, or they might be wholesaling to businesses that way. If these businesses are going to, you know, kind of try to add this process to their revenue stream, you know, like bidding for a contract with the government, is there a standard way that the government pays, or is every standing offer RFP, is it all different? So yeah, Stephanie, Finton, anybody?
Finton, go ahead.
I can start that one off, and Stephanie, you're more familiar with working with suppliers, so you can add on. I'm going to go back to this same example, but I want to cover this one off in 2 aspects. Number one, suppliers will not be provided payment for submitting a bid. That's written right into our general conditions, which is written into the solicitation by reference. So you do need to go and read those references. So we don't pay you for preparing your bid. However, any expense associated with preparing your bid should be built into your bid submission, right? So you need to build those expenses within, because of course, if you're issued a contract or awarded a standing offer, awarded a contract, pardon me. But if you do get in business with the government of Canada, you don't want to be spending a week putting a submission together and not getting any payback out of it if you're successful. If you're unsuccessful, I'm sorry, but that's cost of business, number one. Number two, in receiving payment from the federal government, if you are successful, there's a very good example, once again, in the catering, where there's actually a list of available payment options. So the supplier gets to choose how you will be paid by our clients once you're in contract with us.
Wonderful. And can you give an example, Fintan, of something that you would build into a bid that, you know, hoping to be successful? Would it be labor to you know, have someone spend 12 hours in your business actually doing the bid for you? Or
normally you won't have a line item in there to actually put in a line item, you know, bid submission cost me this many hours at this rate. You won't find that in any of our solicitations. You're actually just going to have to build that in within your pricing, because the only pricing that you can offer us is, in this example with the catering, is your price of meals over a period at different locations. There is not a line item in there to add that additional cost.
And could I just add to anybody that's on the call today, that's where, you know, WeBC comes in handy with regards to, if you've not, like if you think you're going to get a government contract, you know, based on this looks really good and you're capable, but you're going to need $40,000 worth of supplies or equipment to be able to do the contract, it's better that you kind of, you know, build that, like that capacity before you actually get the contract and you're scrambling to get a loan. So I would just make sure that everybody understands that once this process is in process, you know, you can't kind of stop. Well, I guess you could stop and say, well, I can't do it. But the idea is you have to do some prep ahead of time. And that prepping might be, you know, making sure that if you needed to go and buy something to get the bid, you would have those funds available to you. Sorry, I butted in.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks.
And yeah, a reminder to the audience, at any point, pop your questions in the chat. If you don't need to wait till the end, you can cut in at any point. We have a few things that we do want to talk about, but as always, the things that you want to know are more important than what we think we should probably tell you. So don't be shy about that. Just type them in there, or I think you can probably send them to me or Kathy or Jen directly if you would rather not have those sent to everybody. But the next one that we think is important is obviously related to compliance and quality. So these are two very important things when working with government and with anybody, but the compliance piece specifically. So Fintan, how can suppliers ensure that they are meeting all of the necessary compliance standards and maintaining that high quality of work throughout an entire standing offer or supply arrangement? In like I said, in regards to, obviously you're forecasting quite a few years ahead. So are there any kind of best practices to managing that length of a potential contract?
Do what you say you're going to do.
Great, next question.
Actually, no, it's a very good question. And of course, it starts right at the solicitation period, right? So I'll get a few notes here for myself. So ask your questions at the solicitation period. Be very, very clear. Know what you're signing up for. Make sure you're able to meet that. Some of our documents are very, very, very complex, right? There's standards, right? Let's go back to the food catering. There's a whole list of standards in this one. Make sure that any standards that are listed in the solicitation are available to you. If you don't have those standards written and they're not available to you, you can ask for them from the contracting authority, right? It is not intended that you purchase a standard. If the standard is at a cost to the bidder, then the technical authority is obligated to provide you with those standards. Okay, so that's very, very important. Be very, very clear about the statement of work and any attached annexes. understand them, make sure you're able to meet them, insurance requirements, make sure that you're able to achieve those. And sometimes we're not perfect about things like insurance requirements. If that's not an industry standard for what you do, and we've asked for it, bring the clarification forward, ask the contracting officer, right? Because sometimes maybe it's just a flow through from something different and it doesn't make sense in what you do. And be prepared to be evaluated against the standards that are presented into tender, including customer satisfaction. In the solicitation document, you'll read about vendor performance. Vendor performance is real in the federal government, and it's a point rated system. And you go from having a point or two against you right through to being debarred and not permitted to submit bids to the federal government for a period of up to 3 years. So you want to be sure that you don't get caught up in poor performance. I mean, obvious, none of us want to. However, once again, look at the example, and Stephanie, I don't know where you came up with this catering example because it is absolutely perfect for today. Okay, you look at the example, there's a meal satisfaction checklist in the example, right? And this is part of what the supplier will be evaluated against by those that are receiving the meals, right? So it's a really good example. So once again, compliance and quality, it comes down to the deliverable at the far end, but it absolutely starts at the front end with this solicitation that's posted on Canada Vice. And Alison?
No, I think you covered it.
Thank you so much. And yeah, when you're talking about the question period, don't ever feel like if you ask too many questions, they're going to be annoyed with you. And when your bid comes in, they're like, ugh, it's this guy. And they're just not even gonna, like, it's going to reflect badly. It absolutely doesn't. The contracting authorities, they actually get a little bit worried. I was just talking to one of the directors earlier this week, and she's like, if we don't get any questions on a tender, like, we're expecting something in there to be not wrong, but like, we're going to industry, and perfect example with the insurance, like, government may not always be up to date on the latest insurance requirements, or if maybe, you know, most caterers don't carry liability insurance, they cover some, like, a different type. Industry is going to know more about that than whoever's issuing that tender. We do our best, but we're expecting some kind of a feedback or a question, and if they get no questions, it's usually some kind of a red flag that bid or that tender may be unsuccessful, and they may not get any or very few responses. So, and if that's like, they may choose to postpone it or amend it, like, before it even closes. Like, there are some indicators if it doesn't seem like it's going well. So definitely don't be shy on those questions. If you see something that kind of doesn't quite make sense with what you know as a business owner, raise that. There is no repercussion to asking those types of questions. Asking good questions, I should say. Always ask as many.
There's another, there's another small addition to that too, is be very aware of the question period, because we do have a point in time during the solicitation that we have to stop questions, because questions have to be responded to in both official languages. We need a period of time to translate any questions and responses so that all bidders are receiving the same information. And so for that reason, we do have to have a cutoff period so that we have time for the solicitation to run out and bids to be received and evaluated. So be aware of that. If that question period is, it's, you know, I mean, I know that sometimes it's difficult to go through a solicitation. This is a big one. That catering one is a big one. It's really difficult to get through all of that solicitation and not start encroaching into the end of the solicitation period. But you know, if you are getting near the end of it and you're not finished going through it, it's absolutely within your rights to request an extension. If it's possible at all to extend the solicitation period, the contracting officer will do everything they can to do that. More operational type tenders, then it gets a little bit more critical, and the answer might be no to extend solicitations, but whenever possible, we will.
Definitely extend, don't submit late, because that's now non-compliant. Ask the question again, it won't reflect poorly if you request an extension. If you email it 2 days later and say, oops, sorry, that's like, they can't do anything anymore with that. But we have another question. I'm not super clear on what the question is asking. So Fintan, if you know, great. And if not, maybe McLean could just provide a little more context. So the question is, would CSA approved cover the majority of services? And I'm not sure what CSA is referring to, if you're talking about the contract security program or
Sounds like Canadian safety standards. Okay. I can talk briefly to safety to standards. The standards, yeah, Canadian safety standards. So the standards that we'll use will be based on the knowledge of the technical authority, right? If the client does not have a written standard, whether the department, it might be Department of National Defense, they have some of their own standards. Marine industry has their own standards. Canadian safety has standards, and we may tap into those standards when we need a standard. There's international standards that will sometimes call up. So it's it's difficult to say that one standard association covers everything, because there isn't. There's many different associations that will reach to provide us with standards, and you can see some of those in the example RFSO that's been provided. So once again, you may not be aware of a standard until you see it, but if you see it in a tender, make yourself aware of it before you submit your tender, submit your bid.
Awesome. I'm impressed.
I have another question, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I wondered, like, how long this process takes from the time that the RFP is closed, you've submitted your bid on time, you're not 3 days late, before you're notified that your bid has been successful and the work is to begin. Is it a pretty standard, like 3-month period or 2 weeks, or?
It all depends. It depends how many bids, it depends how complex, if you know, each tender is going to ask the bids to contain different information. So if they need a ton of references and examples and all that stuff, that will take longer to go through. So it can sometimes be a really short turnaround time, and sometimes it can be months of evaluation. There's sometimes a few clues that you can look for, less so with the standing offers and supply arrangements, but on an RFP, if it closes, say in September, and work is scheduled to begin, and sometimes it'll say when it's scheduled to begin in November, you probably are gonna hear by November. But it's all subject to change as well, and like that. So I wouldn't say that there's a consistency of you can expect to hear back in 7 to 14 business days. It will depend on a few things.
So going back to the catering example, would you suggest that businesses, again, smallish businesses, do one tender at a time or one RFP at a time, see if they're successful, and then start doing another one? Or would you think that it would be foolish to kind of do 3 at the same time, not knowing kind of when they're going to start, etc.? That could get you in trouble. Just wondering.
Yeah, for sure. So for an RFP, that's probably a little bit ambitious. Just again, if there's some indication, you can plan accordingly and you have that capacity in case you get all 3, then excellent. With the standing offer supply arrangement, I think that it's probably a little more doable if you want to join multiple lists and be considered for multiple, like maybe you do consulting, like you're a service provider, you do consulting and training and something else, and you could be on 3 different lists to be considered for those 3 different commodities or services. And it wouldn't be the end of the world if you were contacted for all 3. But at the same time, you can refuse. That's not a problem if you only want 1 or 2. So I think it will depend again on business capacity and what's realistic to expect for work-wise.
And
Do you mean to add
help
that?
out, yeah,
Yep.
to help out a bit with that one is this RFSO does actually state how many periods of a contract in each of these locations. So it's this location for 1 year. But then when you look into the resulting contract clauses that are within the document, it just leaves the period blank. Standing offers and supply arrangements are not as defined as contracts. Because when we're going into contract, we need those goods and services by a certain time frame. Most likely March 31st of a particular year, which is the end of our fiscal year and our funding runs out. Say that jokingly, but quite often it's actually very specific. If you look at shipboard equipment, and Elsie and I are both in the marine industry. If you look at shipboard equipment, we need a piece of equipment for a ship because the ship is going into refit, right? So if we're looking for a propeller, we need that before the ship is sitting on blocks in the dry dock, right? That's going to be very, very specified with virtually no deviation to it. Standing offers of supply arrangements, we're looking for a standing offer for a 1-year period with maybe 1 or 2 optional years included, and that'll show in the tables that are within the document. And we're not really looking for such a specified time frame. Depending on how specific the time frame is, that's going to give you some guidance on how quick we're going to get that evaluation done, right? So once more complex evaluations are going to take longer, and the better you submit your bid, the easier it is for us to evaluate it, right? You'll see some of the evaluations, the technical evaluation will actually include how well you put your bid together, right? So if you put your bid together and you section things off into categories, and then when you're filling in the tables and you're filling in that my experience for this particular technical person is 5 years, and then you put in where the location within the document is to provide that information, that's great. But if I have a stack of paper that's 1.5 inches thick and I'm trying to find that qualification, not myself particularly because I'm a contracting officer, the technical authority is trying to find that information. It's going to take longer, and on those bits where that's evaluated, you're gonna lose points, right? So the evaluation period, a little bit of flexibility in there. But as always, if you've submitted your bid and you're wondering why this is taking so long, you can ask the contracting officer. If you look at our general conditions, we'll state in the general conditions what the bid validity period is. And I think our standard bid validity is 60 days, right? If we're creeping up on that 60 days and we've not awarded a contractor a standing offer, we are going to come out and ask you to extend your validity period. So you're only locked into that 60 days unless we request otherwise.
Awesome, thank you. Maybe we'll change track a little bit by talking about how suppliers can go kind of beyond the more transactional interactions with government to build more of a partnership with the buyers, which could potentially improve chances of becoming more visible on those lists. Often you'll hear, and I don't know where I've heard it, but around of government buyers, it's like a blind date, and because you don't know what you're going to get, you don't know what the bids are going to look like, you don't know who's going to submit it, but realistically it's not, because you get the same people. So every time it's not there are certain people that you get to know, you get to recognize their name, their company, and like that. So are there any kind of strategies to becoming less of a blind date?
I don't know, for the younger person in the
Speaking of dating,
room.
It's a good question. So contracting officers, we always want to do a little bit of research about our commodity. We get a requirement in, we want to make sure that we get what our clients are needing. So we want to know what's out there. So we're always, searching Google, talking to our colleagues, talking to PAC, wanting to know more about what's possible and what we can ask for. And that'll help us shape our procurement strategy, what sort of instruments we use. So it's really, really useful if you're making yourself visible, Googleable, if that's a phrase, is always handy. Registering for directories. So I think WeBC and actually PAC has shared some of those directories with us, which we share with our clients. And that allows us, again, to get that sense of who you are and where you are, what's happening. Another sort of interesting idea, and we've talked about sort of building capacity a little bit, is looking at maybe doing some subcontracting. That gives you the opportunity to sort of see how it all works, maybe work with a bigger supplier who has a little bit more capacity, see how they're approaching these tenders, and allow you to build your capacity while you're getting that practice in. I think that's about all I had.
yeah.
Yeah, and,
No.
one of the pieces that Procurement Assistance Canada can help you with is contract history. So you can look at your commodity and you can figure out who is being awarded those bigger contracts, and you can look at those suppliers and know whether or not they're in your region or your neighborhood. So PAC can help you with that as well.
Absolutely. And that can tie in really well to low dollar value opportunities, which we have talked about over the last couple of sessions. But if you're a caterer, you're not really, the RFSO is a little bit too much for what you have available right now. Maybe you're limited by location. You only serve an area that's not requested at this time. You can look at the contract history for past departments and regions that have wanted some catering in the past, and you can just reach out to them directly using that government electronic directory. So that contract history can play in really well to starting your low dollar value research. You can find a department that has had that requirement, and you can just send them an email and ask, like, hey, this is what I do. This is the area that I serve. I've seen you've purchased this in the past. Do you need it? Probably write a better email than that, but to that effect of using that contract history. There is so much data. It's available. I think goes back to 2010. So 13 years of what departments have needed, what goods and services. So that can really help with low dollar value procurement. When you're starting, it's great. You have the directory, and then you're looking at 100 some odd departments and going, how do you start? That's a good place to start, as well as reaching out to PAC. We can help you. We have a better understanding of which departments have offices where, which can also help. But I think we have time for one more before we start to wrap things up. So maybe we can talk a little bit just about the Canadian Collaborative Procurement Initiative, and how that is going to change things from the supplier's perspective in the next couple of years.
So being respectful of time, I'll read a little bit to you that I've actually downloaded right off the website. So the Canadian Collaborative Procurement Initiative is part of the federal government's ongoing work to modernize their procurement tools and our practices. The initiative shared with the federal government down to the provinces and the territories, as well as the MASH sector, and that stands for municipalities, academia, academic institutes, schools, and hospitals. So those are all able to use some of our standing offers and supply arrangements that we're publishing on Canada Buys. Obviously the benefit of adding all those other levels of government to one commodity in one document means that if you're interested in doing business with, hey, catering, what a great example, right? You want to do business with Department of National Defense? They're written all over that RFSO that you've seen. If you also want to do business with the government of BC, then they have access to this particular one, they don't, but some of them they would have access to as well. And if it was catering and the provinces and territories were included using CCPI, then the universities, schools, and hospitals would also have access to that commodity through that one document. So Canadian Collaborative Procurement Initiative, if you see it in a tender, you'll see the provinces and territories listed in there as identified users. And if you see them listed in the document, now you know that you're actually providing a bid to all levels of government that are listed within that document. So it's not a new initiative. We've been doing it for about 7 years now. Mostly we're seeing a lot of goods being tendered in this through this process. But some of the values behind this is in the year 2021-22, our fiscal year, of course, the total spend on CCPI was $15.7 million across the country. That's an increase of 130% from the previous year. So it is being used. There's a lot of value through there. Some of the increases have been in commercial tires. We've also had a huge increase to the MASH sector, which wasn't as prevalent the year prior to. And another commodity that's really had a high uptake is the P25 portable mobile radio equipment has had a huge uptake in there. But multiple provinces and territories are benefiting from this. And like I say, if you see a document, a request for sign off or a supply arrangement, and you see the provinces and territories included, that's where we've expanded those opportunities.
That's awesome. Yeah, and super, like you said, you're basically submitting a bid to all three of those levels, not just federally. And when Fintan says that the provinces and territories and those sectors have access to the commodity, that would be access to that list of pre-qualified suppliers. So they could issue their own call up to anybody on that list. Is that correct? Perfect. Yeah, I don't see any more questions from the audience. It has been a quiet bunch this morning. So we said, feel free, reach out to me. You'll get my contact information after this session. If after, thinking about this for a little bit, you have some things come up, absolutely, we will work through those together. This is going to be the last session of this series, so thank you all for joining us this summer over the last 4 parts. I hope that now you are in fact bid ready, or at least have a more robust understanding of what is required to be bid ready. As Kathy said, if you want more of these sessions with PAC, let her know. I am always happy to come back out and start the next round. Thank you again to Fintan and Elsie for joining us. This is the first time for me, at least, working with the business advisory team, and I think it's the first time we've brought them over to speak to the WeBC audience. So very exciting. We've had 2 firsts with this group, this series. One more thing while I have you, we will be also doing a small business information expo in Kamloops on September 20th. So there was also supposed to be a Kelowna location, and that will hopefully be to follow, but given the circumstances, it didn't seem like the right time to be organizing when everybody's so uncertain of what the future looks like. So the Kamloops one is a go. Anybody from the area, come by. It'll be at the Kamloops Chamber of Commerce from 10 to 2. And I'm sure you will get an email about that as the communications start to go out. But you heard it here first. Come see me. I will be there. And I look forward to seeing some of you. I will pass it back over to Kathy. But yes, thank you again, Fintan, Elsie, for sharing so much valuable information. I learned something, so I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much to everybody. This was a great series. I mean, we have had a great relationship with PAC over the couple of years here at WeBC, but we really saw this time the benefit of doing webinars that go through the process step by step, because we know it's not easy. Our small business owners are busy working, and it's difficult to kind of, do everything that you want to do as a small business owner. But our registration for these sessions have been through the roof. And I think, again, thank you very much to Stephanie, Finton, Elsie, especially to Stephanie, for getting the people involved in this this series, where you can put a face to an email, to a name, it's not just like the government is a fictitious place. The government is a real place with real people. And guess what? They need to buy services from other Canadians that are providing services and goods. So it's just been wonderful. And yes, I can see a CCPI session in our future. I'm sure that would be fantastic. So thanks to everybody. And as we've said, everything in this session and the other 3 sessions are available to you and are going to be emailed to you. And any questions, we're just happy to have. So again, thank you very much to Stephanie, Finton, and Elsie. And yes, we know we'll be seeing you again soon. So that's great.
I hope so.
Yep. And I just want to remind everybody, if you can stick around for a few more minutes, we've got a feedback poll coming up. I want to draw everyone's attention to this September 14th, Building Your Business Plan, Formalizing Your Ideas series, because as we learned with this bid process in this series, it's similar to writing a business plan. You have to have a plan of how you're moving forward. And it's not always sexy, but you know what? There's people to support you, especially at WeBC, PAC, everywhere. Okay, thank you very much for joining us, everybody, today. Jen is going to put up a feedback poll. So the feedback poll will take a minute of your time to fill in. Again, if you have any questions or any suggestions for future webinars with PAC or anyone else, we would love to see that. And otherwise, yeah, it's been a week. I'm sure everybody is a bit tired, but thank you very much for the 35 or so people that participated today and the questions we got. And remember, when you're feeling more up to thinking about business in a week or two, don't leave your questions in a box or on a piece of paper. Send them to us. We've got resources to help you through this situation, this horrible fire situation, or anything else. And like I say, Stephanie has been great in being able to answer questions regarding this process today, tomorrow, in 3 months, that sort of thing. So use us, we're here. So if you could do the feedback poll, we'd appreciate it. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Stay safe, everybody. Watch for the alerts in your community, and just make sure we're all going to get through this. And yeah, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care, and we'll see you next time. So thank you.